Hi, welcome to Excel for Educators, Episode 6. My name is Alicia Parker, and I'll be your host. In this video, I'll be demonstrating how to take data from one column and split it into two or more columns. I'll be doing this on a Windows 10 computer using Excel 2016. If you're on a different operating system or a slightly older version of Excel, much of this should look the same for you. So let's get started. This is a data set of fake student data that probably looks like something you might use in a school or a district. There are a few different ways you can separate data from one column into multiple columns. In episode 5, I explained how to separate data that has a delimiter, such as a comma or a dash. In this episode, I'll explain how to separate data using the fixed width option. The first column here in our fake student dataset is labeled Student ID, and you can see that each student ID is an alphanumeric ID. So if there was a need to separate out the letters S, I, and D from the numbers that followed into two separate columns, we would not be able to do this like I explained in episode 5, because there's no delimiter. There's no comma or dash or pipe that we can tell Excel to use as the character to split the column. Instead, we need to check and make sure that all our data does indeed have three characters in the first three places. We can do this quickly by scrolling through our data or using a drop-down filter and scrolling through the options that appear in our filter. However, I know this data set and won't waste time on this video double-checking the data. If you are working with unfamiliar data, you'll want to validate and make sure before using fixed width to separate the data that indeed the first three characters or whatever characters you're using are what you want to separate from the rest of the ID. In episode 5, we learned why it's important to insert a column before splitting the data. So we'll first highlight column B and right-click and choose Insert. Then we'll highlight column A, and under the Data tab and Data Tools section, we'll click Text to Columns. As we noted earlier, we do not have a delimiter, so we are going to choose Fixed Width in our first dialog box. Then click Next, and a second window pops up. In the Data Preview window, we have what you might remember from your elementary school math lessons as a number line. We're going to use this line to tell Excel exactly where we want to split our column. In our example, we want the first three characters, the S, I, and D, to be separated from the numbers. So see this notch right here between the start of the line and the number 10? This indicates the fifth position, and each little notch is a value of 1. So we want to split our data between the third and fourth character. We do that by clicking on the number line on the third notch. Now, it's possible to make an error and click somewhere you didn't mean to click. If that happens, you can always double-click that erroneous line and it will disappear, like this. You can also click and drag the line you created to a different location. So now we have what we want to achieve in our data preview, and we can click Next. Our third dialog box gives us the formatting options we might need. We can change this default if we need to, but take a look at the note here. General converts numeric values to numbers, date values to dates, and all remaining values to text. So our SID will be text and our numbers will be numbers if we just leave this as general. Click on Finish and take a look at what happened. Our data was properly separated. Even our title has a split. We're going to rename these columns or potentially delete the SID column, so it doesn't really matter, but to avoid this in the future, you could select all the data except your column header. For our purposes today, I'm just going to rename these columns. Now, take a quick look at the phone number column we saw in episode 5. We used the dash as a delimiter to separate our area code from our phone number, but because there were 2 dashes, we chopped our phone number into 3 pieces. Using the fixed width approach, we can actually avoid this and just tell Excel that we want to separate the area code. However, unlike when we use the delimiter option, the dash won't disappear when the data is split. So we actually need to split this data off for the area code and split the dash away from the phone number. So our first split will be right here after the first 3 numbers in the phone number, and our second split will be right here, so that we'll end up with an entire column of just dashes that we can later delete. This is a little bit simpler than using the dash as a delimiter and then fixing the mistake of having 3 pieces of a phone number that resulted from using that as a delimiter. The key to using fixed width to separate data is that you must be certain all the data in that column is uniform. If one phone number is missing a dash, Excel will not realize the difference and separate the data at the third position. So just be careful to validate your data before using fixed width. I hope these tips help increase your efficiency with Excel. Check out my additional Excel for Educator videos for more help on Excel. Until next time, this is Alicia Parker with Excel for Educators.